Welcome to the MS&Me Radio Network. The broadcast shows are for informational and entertainment purposes only. They are not designed to provide listeners with specific personal, medical, or counseling advice. Individuals with a medical issue should always consult their healthcare provider. MS&Me is not responsible for content of individual shows. The views expressed by show hosts or the guests are their own. Enjoy the show.
Hi there, and welcome to this, the 43rd episode of A Couple Takes on MS. Hi, this is Dan Digman.
And hi, it's me, Jennifer Digman.
And we want to welcome you here. It's like the middle of the summer when we're talking about this, and just thanks for joining us again. As you all know, and if you don't know, I have remitting multiple sclerosis.
And I am Dan's wife, who also is living with multiple sclerosis. Mine is secondary progressive, and I no longer am able to walk on my own, so I have been using a wheelchair for the past 15, 16 years.
Past forever.
And not really forever, but for a long enough time where I think, with it being summer, I need to get out. I need to do something fun.
And I think that's where what we're talking about today, and it's really to help encourage all of us that you still can do things when you have multiple sclerosis and you're in a wheelchair.
Or even if you're not in a wheelchair and you have to be mindful of conserving your energy, or if you have drop foot or you're weak, you need to have adaptive activities.
There's still plenty of ways to go out and enjoy your summer activities. And that's what we want to talk to you, just to give you a case in point that Jennifer is in a wheelchair. Jennifer cannot stand without assistance from somebody else. But where were you a couple weeks ago?
Yeah, I was going fishing. And I haven't fished in probably like way longer than I want to admit, but certainly since I've been diagnosed with MS, I've been on a boat maybe one time, and this fishing trip that I recently took involved me and my wheelchair getting on a boat and going fishing.
And I think that's where it really makes it a big deal. I mean, because you got on a boat and it wasn't like you had to do anything special to make that happen, like to do a ramp. This was a place right here in Michigan, in the lower peninsula of Michigan, that has fully accessible boat with a ramp that you can drive your chair on. End of story.
End of story, because the one other time that I have been on a boat, Dan, my loving caregiver, helped transfer me out of my chair into the boat. But this fishing excursion allowed me to stay in my chair, which was really good because I needed that stability to kind of man a fishing pool. But I just rolled onto the boat in my chair because the boat was equipped with a ramp and it was large enough to take me in my power chair, and we were with Heavens, there you and Pete and Deb and Cliff and John. Yeah, there were 6 of us, 6 adults, and it was wonderful, and I was fishing just like anyone else.
And that's where we, as people with multiple sclerosis, people who use wheelchairs, it's the reality is it's a lot of work on our part to go out and find these types of things, but there are accessible, fun things to do despite being in a wheelchair, despite having a disability, whether visible or invisible. And this is where it comes back to our thing that we say, surround yourself with positive, encouraging people, because this is something we never would have done. You had said that you hadn't been fishing in a long time.
A long time.
And my point was, I always went fishing when I lived back in Iowa. We were fishing off the dam and everything and fishing on the river. But now some, 18, 20 years later, after moving to Michigan, where there's
water everywhere.
water everywhere. And I had never been fishing in Michigan. But we had a very dear friend of ours who was adamant about finding some place where you, Jennifer, could get on a boat and go fishing.
Yes, and not only me, but you could be there and you could fish. And it was just, that was our friend Pete. He was the impetus behind our whole fishing excursion, but he really wanted me to be able, he was a commercial fisherman when he was working a while ago,
but out on Lake Superior.
He tells some of the best stories, and I always said that I wanted to go fishing, and Pete found this amazing company here in the lower part of Michigan and made it happen, and it was everything. I mean, it was just so much fun just to be on a boat, even, being out in the sunshine. If I didn't catch fish, which I did, not to brag, but, even if I hadn't caught a fish, it would have been just a wonderful trip just to be outside on the water like everyone else.
And that's something where we didn't necessarily say, hey, we want to go fishing. I mean, I guess I never really thought of it that, would you want to go? And it's just like being open to other people encouraging us, because I think that was a lot of work on our part. And that's the other thing that we all, those of us with multiple sclerosis, it's the reality is a lot of these places aren't like in your backyard. Maybe they are, but I mean, we had to drive probably about an hour and a half, almost 2 hours to get to on a Saturday morning, but it was worth every minute, every second to go and get to this place. And it's called barrier-free boating, and it turns out the owner has a very incredible story that he and his friend used to go fishing and hunting together all the time, but his friend eventually was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis and no longer could go out in the wild fishing or hunting. And so after his friend had passed away, he felt the need, he said that was his calling, is to develop and install a place where people with disabilities, people in wheelchairs, could go fishing and on a boat. And so he, with his own money and donations and grant funding, built an accessible dock, an accessible fishing dock, where people, you wouldn't have to go out on the boat, you could go up and you could fish from on the water from the dock.
And it was incredible, and it was so freeing, and it did, and I don't want to speak for any other people, but for me, myself, to feel like anyone else sometimes can be a little difficult when you're in a wheelchair. But when you're out there on the water or on the dock and you're fishing just like everyone else, that felt pretty, not that I feel excluded because of my chair, not at all. But there are times where you're like, why can't I do what that person, that able-bodied person is doing? But that afternoon of fishing, I felt just like everyone else. And I have to go back. I have to circle back, if you will,
Please.
To tell my story that, oh yeah, I was the first one to catch a fish that day.
And that, yeah.
And that was the most amazing thing. And granted, It was catch and release because these were little tiny fish, and I'm not exactly a super skilled fisherwoman, but I caught a fish, and just that feeling to be on a boat with 6 other people and me being the first one,
And
that was a thrill.
and truly was that, and that's where Pete, he was just all smiles, but he said that made his day, and that was why he did that, why he spent, because he started looking at into this, like I remember back, it was in December that he had given me a link to barrier-free boating, and he says, I think we can do this. And that you were the first one to catch a fish, not only the first one, you caught the second one, so you caught 2 fish before any of us even had a nibble.
Again, I'm not bragging, but you are correct, sir. I did catch 2 fish.
And I think that's the beauty of this. And when you go out on these things, what was really nice, this is where I would have trouble. I could bait the hook, but because of my MS, I don't have a lot of feeling in my hands, and so when I would catch a fish, I wouldn't be able to take the fish off the hook. But that's where the captain of the ship, as it were, the boat. I mean, it was a really nice. It was like a 25-foot pontoon. He would take it off. I think that's where they have to have guides to do things, and they are there to help you with the fishing, with the baiting the hook, with taking the fish off, putting it back.
Yeah, and that really, you could focus on yourself fishing, and I could fish, and you didn't have to worry about the limitations that MS has put in your life, and I didn't either. And that's why barrier-free boating in Otter Lake, Michigan was so much fun, and we had such a good day, and we built such good memories. And just, it was a great way to kind of, I don't want to wish upon cold weather here in Michigan, but if we don't do anything in the warmth of the next couple weeks here in Michigan, this is a great way to end our summer with fishing. And I thought it was just a really good experience.
And what was that like for you then, Jennifer? That you were, did you ever have a vision of like, hey, I think I could go fishing, I want to go fishing? And why did you just never have those thoughts? Or why were you open to doing this?
It's silly that, we live in Michigan, a state surrounded by water, but I didn't think that was possible. I know that the other time that I rode on a boat, which was a wonderful experience, was a little difficult because you, Dan, had to transfer me. And I thought realistically, like fishing, that would take so much trunk control. And I really needed the stability of my own wheelchair. So I didn't want to get transferred out of my chair. And I didn't think it was going to be possible. But then interestingly, on PBS, there's a show called Destination Michigan here in Michigan, and they focused on barrier-free boating. And that's when Pete saw the program and learned a little more about the facility. And then he threw the idea out at us, and then we made it happen. So I think did that answer your question?
Yeah. Well, why was it important? Why was it important for you as a person? Because obviously you're not a master angler.
Is it that obvious?
I know you, but but seriously, that wasn't something. I never saw you as a fisherman. Why was it important for you to get up at 5 a.m. to get down to Otter Lake by 9 o'clock for the boat launch?
Because I hadn't done that, and I feel like multiple sclerosis is, unfortunately, I hate to use the word stolen a lot from me, but dang it, it has. And I thought this was an opportunity to do something really fun with some really, really good friends. And I was like, let's do it. And then that you were game made it that much more, Dan, if you have faith that we can do this, let's do it. So, and I thought, I needed to test it and see, I wasn't, again, because I'm not a master angler, I wasn't thinking I was going to go home with a bounty of fish, but I just wanted to try it. What do I have to lose? So that's why I did it. Okay, Mr. Man, tell me, why did you do it? Why did you get up? Why did you schlep me down to Otter Lake?
I think that it was just because those are the moments. Granted, I understand. Yes, we were on on an accessible boat. Yes, there was like an accessible dock to fish, but it's like for those moments where we're doing things. And again, I used to fish. I loved fishing. And it's just that, at that point where we are doing everything, or, something that everybody else is and can do.
And to borrow an expression from our dear friend Kathy Reagan Young, it was our opportunity to look at multiple sclerosis and say, F you, MS. We can fish. I'm in a wheelchair. Dan has his limited dexterity, and he's not letting that hold him back. We were just like, no, we can make this happen. And I think that empowering feeling was probably the best lesson from fishing that day.
And I think that when we had there was this facility, this place, it's like obviously what was his name, the captain? Yeah, but he had a vision, and it's like, not that he knew us way back when, but it's like those places were built and are available specifically for us. And it's like, use it if it's there. And so all of a sudden it's like barrier-free boating took away every single excuse that we would have for reasons why we're not out on a boat fishing. And I think that that's where, I never had any aspiration to do that necessarily, but surrounding yourself with great people to encourage that, to encourage you to take that step, to think outside the box, outside your comfort zone, to say, yes, you can do it. Because, now all of a sudden, that's a memory that we'll have. And I mean, I want to go back and do it again. I want to go out, because we had said, like, what will that be like? Because it's a smaller inland lake, but it's a very deep lake. And the fish were hitting all morning. It was like a 3-hour tour. And that's the thing. This barrier-free boating, it's free. It costs nothing. It's all there through the generosity of donors, of grants and everything. And of course, you in turn give money for the experience, but there was nothing charged, because they want people to be able to enjoy the outdoors and not have to pay for it, not let their disability, their wheelchair, hold them back.
Because they shouldn't hold us back, and they don't hold us back. And that is something, I hope I'm not trying to change the subject in any means. But, we did this amazing barrier-free boating, and then I was like, what else is available? What other things could I do? I've never been the most athletic person out there, but, now that I have had the opportunity to go boating, to go fishing, what else can I do with my wheelchair? And that the world is open, so what else is out there? And I found, that there are a lot of things that people in wheelchairs are still able to do through adaptive sports and adaptive equipment. There's just a lot, from adaptive skiing and paddleboarding to hand cycling, and like I said, boating and sailing, and even such a thing as wheelchair hiking, which I can't imagine doing, but I'm in a motorized wheelchair, and if I had the right guide, I could go for a hike in flat terrain or relatively flat terrain. There's no reason that I shouldn't be able to do that, or to go on water again, the part of the beauty of Michigan is that it's surrounded by water. I could go paddleboarding or I could go sailing again. And so I think once you have a taste of fully accessible activities, you want to find more. And I know you can hop on that there internet and just type in the words accessible activities, or there are maps where you can find places on the map that provide accessible travel or planning for trips and adventures like we had in Otter Lake. So I think that this adventure, if you want to call it, or fishing, I think that just sparked interest in me in finding more accessible adventures to have.
And that's where the notion of it takes work on all our parts if we want to have accessible or enjoy accessible activities. We have to do our work to go online and find the accessible places. But the other thing too is learn to ask the questions and be bold enough to ask the questions or see what's possible. And I'm building on the thought of where you and I are supposedly going to be come the 1st of September, middle of September, with Camp Emmanuel. And that is
I'm going camping.
And Jennifer's going camping, and this is something where just outside of our town here, it's a smaller lake, and they have little
Again,
cabins.
Michigan is full of water.
Michigan's full of water, but it's our church every year has like a weekend camp excursion out there, and people go, and we never went because it was like, oh, it's camping, blah blah blah. Well, we went last year at least for the cookout and the bonfire and everything, and we started to look at the cabins, the little cottages, and they're just little shanties, but they have like beds in there, and they were like bunk beds. And we're like, well, that would never work because I can't transfer Jennifer from her chair into the bed with the big
metal frame
bunk on top. And we said, well, if there's any way to separate the bunks, we could make it happen. Nice thing is the camp happens at the end of their season, and they would have no problem separating the two beds.
And thus, we're going camping.
And it's just for us to figure out, what do we need to make things adaptive or accessible for us? Because obviously, Coldwater Lake is not going to have, the knowledge or the thought to let's have the separate beds so people in wheelchairs can stay here with their caregivers. But you ask the questions, you make it happen.
And what's really exciting is that Coldwater Lake Park, where we are going to go camping, they have, I'm sure you may have seen if you're a wheelchair user or a caregiver of someone who uses a wheelchair, beaches can have paths that are hard enough for a person in a chair to roll on the sand and not get stuck in the sand. And they have that at Coldwater Park. And so I'm going to be able to go on the sand and not get stuck. Even so much as, it's September, so the weather may not be ideal. But if I wanted to, I believe they have chairs that are like kind of equivalent of PVC pipe that I can transfer into, and Dan could roll me into the water if it were warmer, and I could go, quote unquote, swimming, or at least get in the lake. And so I think that's exciting. And again, none of this happens if you're not willing to try to do a little legwork, pardon the pun,
But
a little research, and surround yourself with people that can help you to find events like this or to find opportunities like this. We are going to church camp, and that is what's making this camping trip in September possible. And our dear friend Pete, he watched Destination Michigan, and he found out about, the barrier-free boating, and made that happen. And Dan and I, we can look online and find tons of resources. So the fact that I'm a wheelchair user should not limit me from trying new things and experiencing the good times other people have.
And that's where it is just the looking and surrounding yourself, because A, we never would have thought of fishing. B, we never would have thought of camping, but you surround yourself with the people who see the opportunity, the potential of things that, those of us living with MS, those of us living with invisible disabilities, a lot of times we're just trying to get through the day, that we're not able to think outside and think of what could we do to make this happen.
And again, I mentioned the internet for finding out the information about these different locations and facilities. But, hop on Facebook. There are tons of communities that share stories about things like this, or go to your, for us, the National Multiple Sclerosis Society, or the MS Association. They may have resources, or their publications, the MS Foundation, exactly. Their magazines. I'm sure there are a number of things that we haven't even explored yet, and that's what's so exciting. It's just to keep your mind open and try new things.
And that's where you lived it, and you were the first one to catch a fish. And granted, yes, things could have gone terribly wrong, but they didn't, and that's where the preparedness and the foresight, thinking about, because fortunately it wasn't ungodly hot. It was actually cloudy that day, so the sun was there or wasn't there, and you caught a fish, and
you also caught a fish. Don't brag on yourself. Don't forget to, because you caught fish, and it was just a perfect day, and we were really fortunate to have it. And thank you for listening to my story and Dan's story about fishing.
And hopefully that story encourages you to look beyond things, find things that you can do, find the people, find the resources, because they're out there, and it just improves the quality of your life. You can learn more about the fishing trip. Go to our blog. It's danandjenniferdigman.com. There's some pictures.
There are photos.
There's photos. And let us know. Reach out to us on Twitter. It's at DanJenDig, or go to our website and let us know, what kind of activities are you able to do despite having MS and despite being in a wheelchair. So thank you all again for tuning in, and this has been Dan and Jennifer. We're on A Couple Takes MS, or A Couple Takes on MS. Thanks to the MS&Me Radio Network for having us, and thanks to the Blue Giraffe Kid for composing the theme music to our program. Talk to you soon.